Hey, welcome to the second episode of the Hot Seat. This is your host, Cam Perry, and Paulo's not able to make it today, but I got another one of my co hosts in. And introduce yourself for people who didn't see you last week and what you're doing right now.
All right, so for those who didn't see me last week, I'm Brandon Desma. As Cam said, I'm his co-host for the show, along with Paolo, who can't be with us, as he also said. And I just started writing at Real Sport just a few months ago, and I'm really enjoying it. For those who follow Cam on the website, try to look at a few of my articles, and I think he does a really good job, and I feel I do a good job as well. So I hope you guys enjoy the show.
Okay, so the first topic we're going to talk about, and this is going to be a real politically heavy show because there's a lot of stuff that happened this past week that are real deep that I know is going to probably upset a couple people, but we're talking about real stuff because like I said, we both work for real sport, so we talk about real issues. So we're not going to sugarcoat anything. So the first topic we're going to talk about is Charlotte losing the All Star game. So Brandon, I'll let you start with that and what you think about that happening.
All right, so for those who don't know about it, Charlotte was going to be hosting next year's All Star game, and the NBA decided to move the All Star game out of Charlotte. And that was, in fact, because there's a rule not a rule, there was a law in Carolina that was uh, passed this year, actually, that had to do, sorry, give me a second. It had to do with uh, hold up. I'm trying to think. What was it again, Cam? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was discriminating towards lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgender people.
That's
So
right.
they,
Yeah, I was reading up on it. I remember now. And the law had to do with people. There's, everybody has their own preferences, what their sexuality is, and stuff like that. And it was a law that was really discriminating against transgenders because you have your own sex that you're birthed as. That's on your birth certificate. And whether that you believe that stays the same or as you go on in life you have a different preference for yourself, there shouldn't be any discrimination towards that. And the year now, especially with all the events that have been going on in the last few weeks and months, and so something like that was passed this year is kind of, not even kind of, it's really off-putting. And to see a law like that, passed, and for them to believe that everything's okay with it, and they're one of the few, or I think maybe the only state to actually have that law, it's so discriminatory. And the NBA gave, even though it's not Charlotte's law, it's the state of Carolina. The NBA gave them a choice. You either find a way to get this law changed or, lowered down to some extent, or, we move the All Star game out because, the NBA is a really global brand now. And one, that doesn't look good for their brand. And two, in the world we live in now where we're trying to make everything equal and then a law gets passed like that, what is that saying? So there's my take on it.
yeah, so wouldn't I'm gonna just play devil's advocate here because I feel like, and I'm gonna preface this before I even say what I'm about to say. I support all different types of people, especially the LGBT community. Even though there's some out there that are a little extreme and take everything uh, as offensive, but I feel in this case, I feel like the NBA probably strike way too quick. I feel like they should have gave him time because the All Star game isn't until next year, next February. So they should have had a chance for them to get it right and for the city of Charlotte not to be punished because I feel like this is an extreme punishment for the city of Charlotte and for the NBA fans there who have never had an All Star game, I believe. While other cities have had multiple, like Vegas has had one, New Orleans has had a few, Houston, Chicago, all these different cities, and I feel like I understand why they did it, but I still feel like the fans really deserve to have it there, especially Michael Jordan, who is, in my opinion, the best player of all time, and I'm sure it's probably your favorite too. and I just feel like it's a disservice for the league, and it's not really good for the league for that to happen. But I understood why they did it, and it's a business, and they don't want to hurt the people that are affected by this because, like I said, there's more and more people coming out every single day, and they do not want the negative backlash to affect their league.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in terms of a business standpoint, I mean, I can agree with the side of it does hurt. It hurts and helps the NBA. It hurts them because I believe I was reading earlier that Charlotte is going to lose about $100 million in revenue that they would have earned from this year's All Star game. And for a small market like that, compared to the other cities we're talking about, like a Vegas or Chicago, or even a few years they've had it in Orlando a few times, maybe not as big of a market, but probably a bigger place to have it more so than Charlotte. And this was going to be their year. Not every team can make it to the playoffs, even though they did, and they made good strides in the right direction last year. But I mean, I think we can all look and know that they're not going to be a finals team, bar some crazy thing happening in the Eastern Conference. And that is kind of like their event next year. Maybe the team is more so looking at, the season as a whole, but the organization itself and management, like this was, their big event that they were waiting on. And I agree with you that probably the NBA should have given them a little more time because it is not until next February. But in a sense, they were trying to send a message. It sucks that Charlotte had to be a part of it because it wasn't their choice. And they tried to do what they could to convince Carolina to think otherwise of their law, but Carolina was staying put on what they thought. And the NBA, like I was just saying before, with its global brand, and like you said, people coming out, especially in the league, whether it's players or even some refs recently, um, the message they're trying to send is that everybody's equal. And if you're going to have a law like that, and probably the league's biggest event of the year, other than the finals, then that's not a good image for the league. And it's not just in terms of an image, but just not a good thing to have. Yes, the NBA and Charlotte are losing out on the money that they could be making there, but they got to look at the bigger picture. It's bigger than basketball.
I agree, but I do feel if they're not going to have it in Charlotte, they should have it in a city that's never had an All Star game. Like Detroit hasn't had an All Star game, Oklahoma City hasn't had an All Star game, and that would be probably my best choice because with the amount of stuff that's going on with Oklahoma City, that'd be a great story to have the All Star game in Oklahoma City. KD will be back in Oklahoma City, and then fans can either boo him at that time or they can cheer for him because I feel like right now people hate the man, but I feel like once everything boils down, people are gonna eventually get over it, just like they did when LeBron left Cleveland. Like people hated him his first year when he left for South Beach, but then they started wanting him to come back to Cleveland because they knew that they missed something and they never won a championship, and they knew that that man, who is the self-proclaimed king, will be the one to get them that championship, and they were, eventually rewarded for their patience waiting for him to return.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Oklahoma, like you said, is probably a really interesting destination for them to think about of having an All-Star game, especially since, it as an organization is one of the youngest organization technically because they used to be in Seattle.
Yeah.
So, that would probably be a good place for it. And like you said, with the whole Kevin Durant thing, people might dislike him, but maybe since it's a happy, going event, possibly having the All-Star game in, Oklahoma could maybe help mend some fences in that sense and maybe make it an easier transition, but I don't think it is a great idea, and they probably should. It should be one of their top destinations. But if the NBA is just looking at it for the sole purpose of, how it's going to work out with Kevin Durant, in Oklahoma City, they're a pretty big business. So we'll see what route they decide to take.
All right, so we're gonna go switch gears and we're gonna talk about another story. And I don't know if you heard about this already, but about Alden Smith posting on his allegedly, I think it's him, but we're not sure if it is. But on his Periscope account, someone who sounds like him, or because I think it's him, but it's to each his own. Was posted smoking weed, and pretty much the girlfriend or whoever he's with was saying stop it, and he pretty much said, you know, don't worry about it. They won't think it's me. They won't think it's Alden Smith. Something along those lines. So I feel like he pretty much ratted himself out
Yeah,
without us seeing footage that actually was him. But it sounded like him and everything. He pretty much said it without saying that it was him. So I feel like the league will have the easiest investigation ever because he was already suspended this past year for smoking weed. And he's doing it again. And he's now probably not going to be eligible to be reinstated in November because he's continuing to smoke weed. And I want to get your opinion on this. Do you think that athletes should not be tested for smoking weed because we keep hearing these athletes get suspended for smoking weed because they failed the test? We got Le'Veon Bell, who has a 4-game suspension now because he missed several tests. And then we also got other players like other Cowboys players. We got 3 different Cowboys players. I'm gonna and a few other names like that. I'll figure what those names are in a second. But I want your opinion on that before we move on to something else.
so in terms of if they should be tested for weed, because weed is one drug that people do take, and they shouldn't be uh you know penalized for it if that is their choice. But we've all had a job or have current jobs, and we all know the rules that go along with the job. There are stuff that we do like to do, but to keep that job, sometimes we have to give things up or make moderations in our life. And if the NFL's guidelines are, don't take PEDs, don't smoke weed, these players have to know better, even if it's something that, that's a part of some of their lifestyles. One big player that is now being reinstated into the NFL is Josh Gordon, who's been out of the league for more than a year and a half or so now. And look at the pace that he was on before he got suspended. I mean, some people were considering him one of the better receivers in the NFL. He has a big build, he's athletic, he's tall, and and I think he had the most yards that regular season about 1 or 2 years ago when he last played. So, I mean, that's a guy who had everything going for him, and he was one of the young stars emerging in the NFL. And the NFL can't play favorites. If that's the rules, that's the rules, and he had violated those rules. And everybody has their own opinions and their own views of whether they should or not. And he was penalized for it. So these players have to know. I mean, there was in terms of social media, there was the Miami Dolphins pick. Laramie Tunsil, I think it was
Yep, Larry Tunsil. Yep.
and what was it? It was pretty much minutes before the draft started, and a video surfaced. I forgot what social media platform it was through, but it was of him with like one of those gas masks or whatever, and he was smoking, and it's like, even if it's your own lifestyle, and maybe, he might have been doing it because he knew it was going to be a high pick and it was a celebratory thing. But you have to know the rules. And especially something like that, whether you're doing it or not, and, by the NFL's rules, you shouldn't. Something like that shouldn't be getting posted on the media. And that's, that kind of comes back to, Alden Smith thing, saying, oh, they won't know it's me. You, you might be a great NFL player. You might make a lot of money, but it's different from the NBA because in the NBA it's more of a players league. The players are the ones who make the money, and it's not like the players in the NFL don't make the money for the teams, but the NFL has a short leash with their players, and they're not afraid to let a guy go. So a guy like Alton Smith or even this rookie can't think they're above the law and they're above everybody else, so they won't find out. They won't know when you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that these players shouldn't be stupid enough to do these things. And the players I was thinking of was Randy Gregory from the Cowboys, Demarcus Lawrence from the Cowboys, and then Rolando McClain from the Cowboys. They're all facing multiple game suspensions. I think each of them are facing at least a 10-game suspension for the Cowboys for
Mhm.
smoking weed. And that's when it becomes ridiculous when you have multiple offenders on one team. That's why Jerry Jones really should let another person run the team, because there is a problem when you have that many players that are willing to ruin their career and jeopardize their future just for some weed. They can smoke weed, when they retire. They can smoke weed, during the offseason. I mean, just don't get caught. If you're gonna smoke weed, at least try not to get caught, because there's too much money that you're giving away when you do these things, and it doesn't help that all this stuff is happening while the Ezekiel Elliott situation is going on with the Cowboys too. And
Yeah,
that's another crazy thing. Like, I hope that the court of public opinion waits for all the facts to come out, because most people, they persecute others, especially when it comes to something as serious as domestic violence in this case, without getting all the the evidence that is presented in front of the person that is allegedly doing these actions, because he has no history of doing these things in college or even before then. And now, when he broke up with the girlfriend, that she wants to speak up and say that he bruised her and hit her and did all these things. What's that and whatever? She just wants a paycheck. Because if you saw the police report, I saw that it was like she was wanted to be a sex slave or something like that. That's her occupation. I don't know if you read the police report. So
I
that
didn't.
is real fishy for me. Like, I don't really believe the chick at all, and I hope that he's innocent. But it wouldn't shock me if he isn't, because, like I said, the Cowboys just constantly uh, keep getting people that are character issue guys, and they take a lot of risks, and it hasn't paid out for them because they haven't had much success. They've only been to the playoffs, I'm pretty sure, 2 years out of the last 10.
About, yeah, yeah. It was about, they made it back in, what was it? Not this past season, but the season before. And
Yeah.
it was, and then the last time was when they lost to Seattle, when Tony Romo muffed the catch off the field goal when they were trying an extra point, and he was the placeholder. But in terms of the Cowboys, one player is, having a situation like that is something, in terms of the weed. But to have two to three, multiple players on a roster, like you said, and I've been saying it for a while, it's time for Jerry Jones to step out of that role. Does he know how to make money? Yes. Are they the most profitable franchise in sports? Yes. And there's a lot of different franchises and a lot of different sports. So that's something. So in terms of money standpoint, yeah, you're making it. But in terms of a product that you're putting on a football field, I mean, there's some talent there, but it just seems like you can't get it right. And a guy like Jerry Jones, who is about his money, but you ever hear the guy, he kind of has like this carefree attitude to him. So, I mean, if your boss, who's the top level, who the one you're supposed to be following, is supposed to be leading by example, is the one that's just kind of like in a cool manner or whatever, like, oh, it's okay, do what you guys want to do, whatever, like that kind of, even if he hasn't maybe publicly said that, he can tell by his, demeanor and how his body language that he gives that off. So, what are his players supposed to do? And now you have all this talent on this roster that, I mean, who are you even suiting up to play on the football field? You invested all this money, invested all this into your top pick in Ezekiel Elliott, who's one of the most talented players they probably have on this roster and one of the most talented of the draft. And now he's dealing with these charges. And I am a fan of him, so hopefully these allegations aren't true. But like you said, I wouldn't be surprised, on a Jerry Jones-led team that something like this would happen, in the midst of also having the other three, being suspended 10-plus games. So that's something they're going to have to address, and that's also another topic in terms of domestic abuse that's becoming too prevalent in sports, mainly the NFL, the last few years, and that's something somebody's going to have to get a handle on because it's becoming too much.
Yeah, I mean, because you see that last year, I'm pretty sure it was last year, was Joseph Randle got in a lot of trouble,
Mm-hmm.
and he was another guy who he never had any issues at Oklahoma State, but once he got in the NFL and got on the Cowboys, he constantly got in trouble with the law, And then you also had Des Bryant had a run in with the law, once
Hmm.
too. I mean, it wasn't nothing as egregious as what Joseph Randle did or any of these other players are doing, but he still got in trouble too. So I feel like just a culture where all these players are getting in trouble because they see other players that are getting in trouble. I mean, there's a popular saying, "Birds of a feather flock together."
Hmm.
So I feel like it's just all just bad energy, and they just need to pretty much just have someone else come in there, fix the whole issue, and they may need to have to get rid of their head coach too, because that means the head coach doesn't have control of the team too, because he's allowing all this stuff to go on under his watch.
Yeah, from the top down, just like you're saying, when it started Jerry Jones all the way down the ladder, all the way to the head coach. You can't have that. And if it's not, if the head at the lead, which would probably be in this situation, Jerry Jones, is giving that persona off. Not leading by example, not setting the ground. Then it's just going to trickle all the way down to the players, and the Cowboys will pay for it, as these players are deservingly so for breaking the rule of the law in the NFL, and it's deservingly so, and eventually, year after year, with all the stories that come out of the Cowboys camp, whether it's like they can't close a game out, they can't make it far, or something all the way to this level, domestic abuses, or smoking weed and getting caught for it. Eventually, isn't it time to switch? There's got to be a change there eventually. If the Cowboys are, eventually want to stop being the butt of everybody's jokes, and start having storylines come out of their camp in terms of football, not in terms of this outside noise that's just becoming more of a distraction for them.
So do you think that what would solve the problem in the NFL and especially on the Cowboys, since a lot of their players are getting suspended for weed, do you think that'd be good for the league to just stop the testing so that that eliminates that issue? Because it's not like all these players are getting in trouble with the law. It's just mainly weed, and a lot, and there's 25 states now that have legalized weed either for recreational purposes or medicinal purposes. So, and I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I think every state is going to legalize weed because it's not harmful for anybody that we know of, and it is safer than drinking alcohol, which is much more harmful for people and has caused a lot more accidents and deaths. So I feel like you might as well just get rid of that, so you don't got these players that are losing money off a dumb thing that they shouldn't be doing, and they care about smoking the weed, like I said before, than their NFL career, which I don't have no issue with it. But if you're giving away all your money just for some drug, then you're an idiot. Like, I wouldn't give away millions of my own dollars for some drug when I can do that when I retire, like I said before, or go somewhere and be away for a while after the season's over, so people don't have to worry about me and I don't have to worry about being tested. Because the problem is these people are smoking the weed and then they're getting tested, and then they wonder why they're not playing this season because they were stupid enough to post on these social media accounts or be somewhere where they know they're not going to be able to pass the test.
So, in terms of that, um, should they be penalized for smoking weed? No, but I think it's for the NFL and the point they try to get across. I think it's more than weed at this point, because the second you let that happen, I think then the floodgates will happen. Oh, if you're not going to test for weed, oh, don't test for the other drugs. Don't test for the performance enhancing drugs. Let us take those. You shouldn't have a problem with that. And I think just by letting that happen might start an effect, a domino effect that could be bad for the league. I mean, I do agree with you. Maybe 5 to 10 years or so, we'll have it in the majority, if not all states. But the second you allow that happen, I mean, you're allowing the floodgates to open. And it's not just that they don't want their players to smoke weed. It's more so we have rules, and the second, like, a weed is a big problem for a lot of these players, especially with the amount of money they make, because they can get as much of it as they want. So the second you allow that, it's, what are the, if that's where players mainly get penalized. And I mean, it is more of a sport, so maybe the penalties should be more so focused on the fields with particular hits and not following those rules. But there should be outside rules to keep players, you know, uh, level-headed and try to maintain focus, on football, because nothing good. I'm not saying this is when they do it, but nothing good really ever happens if you're out late night at a club around 3 in the morning. And I mean, a lot of them might not be smoking out there. They might be drinking, which, if they were rather smoking weed, maybe they wouldn't be drinking. But I mean, that might just cause a much more, many more problems, because if you let that go, then what do you have to hold on to as the NFL? Like, we have guidelines. You have to follow a certain set of guidelines, we don't, whether it affects them health wise or not, you don't want a bunch of your players coming to practice all high when they're supposed to be focusing and they're off to the side, giggling and joking about something. So, I mean, I think the NFL for now, until we'll see how that goes in the future, but should keep what they have right now.
Okay, so I guess we're just gonna have to just agree to disagree at that point. But the next thing I want to talk about is last week, a little bit, a couple days after our show, Derrick Rose got in the news and was saying that his New York Knicks team was a super team. So I want your opinion on that because I don't know, where you're gonna go with this, but I thought it was pretty crazy that he said that.
So when we classify a super team, we're thinking about all stars, right? We're thinking about multiple all stars, big
Mhm.
names on a team. They have big names, we'll give them that. But in terms of all star appearances, I think their latest all star was probably Carmelo, and deservingly so. But who else of that bunch that they brought in that's now classified as a super team has all stars on it? Yes, Derrick Rose has been an all star before. I believe Joakim's been one once or twice in
Mhm.
the past. But that was the past. So if you're going to classify yourself as a super team, shouldn't you have superstars, all stars? I mean, I'm gonna, take a lot of flack on this one, but in terms of superstar, I don't think they have one superstar on that team. I think Melo's the closest, but I don't consider him a superstar. I think he's probably one of the most talented offensive players this league has ever had. I think he can score at any part of the court. His jumper is, pretty much unguardable, especially from the mid range. But in terms of a superstar, you should be able to affect the game on all, affect the game on all facets. Defense, with steals, rebounds, passing. A lot goes into that, and I don't see one player that can classify as a superstar, let alone starting to classify them as a super team. And Derrick Rose, I think, also went on to say that he believes that, like you may have said it before, but he believes that they can compete with the Warriors. They might have some names, might have some talent, and good for them. They're making strides in the right direction in terms of management and getting players on this roster. But you got to make it into the Eastern Conference playoffs first, because the East is nowhere near the West, but they have made big strides in the right direction. I mean, you got to look at the Eastern Conference playoffs as last year and tell me which team you're taking out to put, uh, the Knicks in, because nor the Knicks or the Bulls, which, Derrick Rose was from, and so is Joakim, made the playoffs last year. So, yeah, you have the names, but how can you classify yourself as a super team just yet?
Okay, so you're gonna have to hear me out on this. I think that they have potential to be a super team. And the reason why I say that is because Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah haven't played a full season the last 3 years. And Derrick Rose actually looked very good and very impressive towards the end of last season. And I feel like if both those players are healthy come this season and play the whole season with a healthy Carmelo, because he's been having, injury issues too, I think they have potential to be the second best team in the East because they got Joakim Noah, who's probably one of my favorite centers in the league. He just hasn't really been able to stay healthy. You got Derrick Rose, who showed flashes of potential last season again. and I think that he can come back strong this season. I think he's going to be the most improved player in the league this upcoming season. And you got Carmelo Anthony, who really has got the short end of the stick because every time he's been surrounded with a talented roster, his other talented scoring mates have been injured for most of the year. Because you see Amari Stoudemire when he was with them, he only had one healthy season, and then after that, he really wasn't healthy much of the rest of his playing career with the Knicks. And I don't know if you saw this, but Amari Stoudemire recently retired as a New York Knick, which I felt like was ridiculous because I don't know about you, but I remember most of his best moments was with the Phoenix Suns and not with the New York Knicks. So there definitely has to be some bad blood between them because there's no reason why he shouldn't have retired as a Sun instead of a Knick. Because most Knick fans don't really consider him a true Knick legend.
Right. I would agree with that. I actually, I heard a report earlier, and yes, Amari did sign that 1 day contract to be with the Knicks, just so he could retire. But what his real intent was to play one more season as a Phoenix Sun, and then retire after the season, even if he knew that they probably weren't going to be in contention, because he did just go to Miami this past year because he thought they were going to be a title contender. So going to Phoenix, he probably wouldn't have that mindset, but he would want to, ride off into the sunset with the team we always remember him being a part of, his best years. But the thing was, Phoenix didn't show the same interest back. So his second plan, his second resort was to go to New York for the day and, announce his retirement after signing the 1 day contract.
Yes,
So, oh yeah, so I'd agree with that. I don't think of him as a Nick when I think Amari. I think of him, you know, going, making Phoenix, along with Steve Nash, a force against, Los Angeles and San Antonio when those two teams were dominating everybody. And then there was just little Phoenix that was around, and they pushed, they pushed Los Angeles to I think a 6 game series, or maybe even a 7 game series back in what was it, 2010, I believe it was, when they played against each other. Or it might have been 2009. I can't remember the exact year. But that in terms of Amari, and I see your point with the amount of talent they have, and you know if they with a full season under their belts, they, and especially how Derrick Rose looked last season at the end of last season. But we got to remember, you had said that when was the last time Derrick Rose or Joakim Noah played a full season? That's probably got to be the biggest question coming from those two. Can you stay on the court? Carmelo battled a few injuries here and there last season, and even when his team was out of the playoffs by a long shot, he was still out there because he's just a competitor. So I'll give him his credit, his due there. But I mean, you have talent. You have Derrick Rose. His backup will be Brandon Jennings, who I like a lot. You have Courtney Lee at the shooting guard. You have Joakim. You have Carmelo. But you're going to need more of a bench. It's going to take time for it to click, And I mean, maybe at the end of maybe towards the middle of the season or end of the season, we'll be having a different conversation. But I don't see them being better than Boston. Not with the pickup of Al Horford. I think they're a really solid team. They're really deep in their bench. I think they're still a better team than New York can be. Um, Toronto was still there. They lost Bismack Biyombo, but they can always find another big. I'm not sure if they have yet. But I like that combo of Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. And I think Indiana has made a lot of strides in this offseason, really improving. They have Jeff Teague. They still have Paul George. They have Thaddeus Young. They have Al Jefferson, who's really, I believe, is underrated. And a really good post game if he can stay healthy. So I really like, what those two teams have. Maybe, they can find their way into that conversation, but have to be seen.
so I have obviously I have New York Knicks as the second best team in the East going to be this year. Who do you have as your second best team? Because I feel like we have different opinions. I feel like you got Boston that's going to be really good. You also have like you already. I think Atlanta's going to be a surprise. To be honest with you, I think they're going to be a shocking team out there because they got Budenheiser. He's going to do his thing. and I feel like people just aren't giving them enough credit because you saw what he did not this past year, but the year before. They had the best record in the East, and they really didn't have that. I mean, really that much talent, but they won 60 wins, I believe, that year. And last year they had a good year, but I feel like this upcoming year they're going to be the surprise team in the East. They may not be the best team in the East, but they'll be, I think, a top four seed.
Um, with that, I will have to disagree. Not with the Boston and maybe Indiana, but in terms of Atlanta, um, I actually wouldn't be surprised if I saw a drop off from them because not that Al Horford was any superstar at this point of his career, but I felt they lost. They lost a really good player and got not as good of a player in Dwight Howard because yes, everybody's like, "Oh, Dwight Howard has to love the situation." He doesn't get the ball in Los Angeles because of Kobe. He doesn't get the ball in Houston because of James Harden. He just needs the ball. He could still be that same guy. If we remember back a few years ago when Dwight Howard was dominating in Orlando, blocking everything, defensive player of the year, and he led that team all the way to the finals. If you really look at it, Dwight Howard isn't that player, and a big part of his game was based off his athleticism. And you start to lose that with age, even though he's not too old, but you do lose that with age. And he's had plenty of issues. He's had shoulder problems. He had a herniated disc he had to get repaired. And if you've ever had any soreness in your back, you can't jump as high anymore. You can't run as easy. That hurts. And again, I feel like he's getting paid a little too much, but it's more so you're paying for a name nowadays. And he's going to a situation where it's going to hurt their offense. Yeah, you could say, oh, you have a post player. Do you really? Because, I mean, everybody's like, oh, he worked with the team, he did this, he did that. But I've seen very limited post game, even when he does get the ball, and he can't shoot. His free throws, he's really weak at the line. And it's not like he has a mid-range or a three-point shot, and that's something Al Horford did develop over the last 2 years. So it was a three-point shot along with his mid-range, and I think he's more skilled around the basket than Dwight Howard is. So I think there's that drop-off. Now, Dennis Schroeder is your starting point guard when you were trying to go back and forth with who it's going to be, and now you've made your decision and moved Jeff Teague off, but you know Dennis Schroeder was good in that role as a backup. Yes, he played late in games, but let's see how he plays for a full season as a starter. Now, who's his backup? So I think Atlanta would actually make a decline there. So back to the original question of who I see as the second seed. It's tough. Miami is obviously not where they're going to be, without Dwayne. And you could say, well, maybe Chicago will be better, but Chicago has a backcourt that doesn't have the ability to shoot from the three-point line. Dwayne Wade's career average on the three-point line is like 27%, and Rondo's is pretty low too. So I don't know how that's all going to mix with those three, including Jimmy Butler. Um, I'd say it's going to be a toss-up between Boston, Indiana, and Toronto. But if I had to choose one, I think it's going to be Indiana as the second seed.
Okay, okay, it's interesting. So we're gonna go to our next point, and this is about MJ finally speaking out. And this actually surprised me because MJ for years he has not spoken out for his people. I mean, he's constantly been criticized by the black community for not speaking out. Whether it is all these kids in the hood that are getting killed over Jordans, to also his stances or lack thereof of not talking about all the stuff that's happening, with police brutalities and all of that matter. So he finally spoke up about that, and I want your take on what you think of Jordan finally speaking out and finally saying enough is enough.
So my response to that would be in Carmelo's words as of today, or whether it's today or yesterday, it's about time. And I think that's the biggest question because, when we think about the NBA, yeah, you might see the logo as Jerry West, but I think a lot of us still question why we don't see Jordan as it now, especially with the iconic Jumpman logo and how powerful he is. Even people that don't watch basketball. you say Michael Jordan. Oh, he's like the best basketball player of all time, right? And that's pretty much all you really have to say about it. Even if you're not an avid fan of the game, that's kind of sums up Michael Jordan. And in that sense, I mean, there's always been these kind of issues. Maybe it seems more prevalent now due to the fact that social media has become such a huge thing. The media is so huge now. Everything is taken a picture of, everything is videotaped. You see everything now in seconds on your timeline for whatever social media account you prefer. And for Jordan, he's never been the one to be a big, adversary of social media or speaking out on these issues. And for him, that's a big step. But for somebody as powerful as him, thank God he finally has spoken up. But where has he been, all these years? He might not be as big of an advocate of social media, but that shouldn't be an excuse why you shouldn't be able to speak out. Whether you decide to type it into your phone and blast it out to the media, or you have cameras around you all the time anytime you step out of your house anyway. How come it's just now that we're hearing from him? We've had, and anybody can have their own thoughts about this guy, but nowadays in all sports, LeBron James has to be the biggest advocate in this change. How much he does for the community, um, not in terms of violence, but in his own hometown of Akron, Ohio. I believe he has his program, and he's promised about, what was that, about 1,000 kids, something like that, a free scholarship to college if they pass all their classes and they graduate high school. Then they have a free ride to college. So he's always donated money to his organizations, and he's always spoken out when these kind of big events happen. A few years back when he was in Miami, with the Tavon Martin shooting, remember he had the hoodie on, he had the M&Ms in his hand, and you know sad stuff like that happens. But right away, LeBron took to social media and he got his whole team together, and they all wore, it was a team photo, and it was just all of them with their heads down wearing hoodies, so you couldn't see their face. But it was to symbolize, I forgot what the caption was on it, but it was to symbolize, we are one. You can't do this to anybody, whatever their race is, whatever their skin color is, it doesn't matter. And he's always been at the forefront of these types of issues. I remember, what was it? This not last year, but the year before. I'm sorry, I forget the name, but the poor man who was choked out by the police officer, screaming, "I can't breathe," and that was videotaped. And he was telling the officer, "I can't breathe. I'm not going to attack you. I just can't breathe. Stop choking me." And the officer had choked him out. And I remember a few days after, LeBron, along with Kobe and Carmelo and a bunch of other guys, when they were in their layup lines at their games, whatever, none of them were wearing their warm ups. They were wearing black shirts saying, "I can't breathe." And they know how many people are going to see it. They're nationally televised. They're not doing it for fame or for people to say, "Oh, you're such a nice guy." They care. They truly care about this type of issue, and they've always been the ones to speak out on it and always have a say on it, and always are politically correct about it, and always, but they're also not afraid to speak their minds. And a guy like Michael Jordan, with the confidence and how he carries himself, I never would have thought it would have taken this long for him to speak out on this, but it is about time.
Yeah, I agree. Everything you just said, everything you said was eloquently said. But I do feel like the issue with this, and this is really a small issue, is I could tell that whoever wrote his speech, they made it so that it was at as least offensive as possible. Like the speech pretty much catered towards both sides, so neither side would be upset with it, whether
Mm.
it was the police or the black folks. And that's why he gave $1 million to the NAACP and also police organizations. So he kind of appeased both sides, so he wouldn't anger either side, and also wouldn't lose potential business deals because he is a businessman and he is the only NBA owner that is black. So he doesn't want to ruin his chances even more than what has already happened with the Charlotte situation, which kind of goes full circle because he already lost probably a ton of money off that, and he doesn't want to lose a ton of money again with this issue.
Um, I would I would agree with that, but in part, it is a lot of money he's losing, and whether it's just for him or for the organization as a whole that he has to think of in the broader picture, that is to lose money. But you know, even though probably was someone who might have fine tuned his speech or wrote it for him, I think that's a big issue that needs to be, assessed, and I think it was really well assessed in this because what gets lost in all of this is that you know people and recently it's been African Americans that have been getting you know the wrong end of the stick at this. That's what gets lost in it as if this is one-sided. Now that is not fair and that shouldn't be tolerated no matter who you are. I don't agree with what's happened in any of those situations. But also recently, we've had a lot of the shootings towards the cops. And as angry as you may be towards somebody, whatever side of they're on, just because a police wears a badge and, he's part of the police force doesn't mean he's the same as the next guy. And those innocent cops, what was it, in Dallas, didn't need to be shot at. And even though it was this guy's kind of, oh, it's us against the cops, and it's like it's the cops that are doing this. It's not. And I think by him doing that, it's showing he is African American, as Michael Jordan, and he has to support his own side, and he did a very well job doing that. But he's also showing that there also needs to be a support towards the other side because it is sad and it is, you know, at times scary that it could happen to anybody, with the cops. But that shouldn't deter people away from the cops. We shouldn't feel that when we see a cop car, you know, next to ours, when we're driving, that we get scared by that. We shouldn't feel threatened by them. We should feel protect. Now, it's sad that recently in the news that kind of stuff has happened, but you shouldn't paint the whole picture with that. It's not just one person. It's too bad that those people have made those decisions on both sides. But I think he did do a good job showing we need to be equal. It can't just be for one side. The cops need someone to support them too. But vice versa. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah, so that's a good segue to my next point, which is with the WNBA players that were recently fined, and then it also got rescinded for them wearing stuff to support Black Lives Matter in the NBA, the WNBA, I mean, were saying that it was a uniform violation, which was complete BS in my opinion, because this wouldn't have happened in the NBA because the NBA kind of did something similar to this, and they never got punished for it. And I feel like whoever is running the front office for the WNBA, it's a bad look for them, and they're already having trouble with people watching their games because I don't know anybody off the top of my head that watches WNBA games. Like I know they try to force feed it on us. I tried to watch a couple of those games and it just wasn't, something I was interested in. I actually watch college women's basketball before I watch a WNBA game because it's just not marketed well. And I feel like this is kind of a reason why they don't respect the athletes like other professional sports do. And they don't get paid the same way that other professional athletes do. They get paid only like 75K for the highest paid, I think, and or something like that, and that's just not right. And I feel like the only reason why they rescinded the fine because of the negative backlash that they received. And people were talking about, oh, why are they doing this? Oh, why are they doing that? And I feel like if it was I don't even know who's the front office person, but it's probably not a black person because a black person wouldn't be doing these things. And I think that somehow Black Lives Matter has turned into a bad thing for a lot of people, and those people don't really understand what Black Lives Matter really means because you got people on Twitter and Facebook. I know when these police brutalities were happening, that were saying all lives matter, blue lives matter, but Black Lives Matter is really a plea for black and brown folks to no longer be devalued. And you got people like Tommy Lauren and Bill O'Reilly that are trying to make it in some type of racist thing or some racist ideology when it's nothing like that. And I know Tommy Lauren was talking about it was the Black Lives Matter was the Black Ku Klux Klan, which is not what it really is. And I respected the heck out of him. I want your opinion on that. Like, what do you think of the Black Lives Matter movement? Because you got people like the WNBA that are kind of standing up to it, but you also got people that are against it, which I'll talk about in just a second.
Now, all your points I do agree with. In terms of Black Lives Mattered, it was, as you say, for the African Americans to say we shouldn't be devalued anymore, even if people try to tell us otherwise. Regardless what people say or something like that, that form of oppression, that devalue is somewhat still out there in a lot of circles, and it's disgusting because one, yeah, nobody should be treated like the way you know they are, and it's a sad thing. And two, back to the women's NBA point, even past the whole term of in terms of marketing for yourself, and how bad of a look that is. Like you said, they probably rescinded it because of the backlash. There should have been no need to rescind it because there shouldn't have been a fine in the first place. These girls are just trying to, these women are just trying to, have a say, and they're trying to, express themselves just as the other leagues have, other players in other leagues have, and they get punished for it. They're not wearing shirts that's, advocating, kids do drugs, drop out of school, commit violence and stuff like that. They're just, and in terms of Black Lives Matter, it should be starting to become more than that. Like other people have said, all lives matter. Everybody should be treated the same. And it's sadly, people still don't. And the women's NBA found themselves in that kind of situation. I don't even see how, and this is one of the bigger issues that we deal with. But I mean, even the NFL, not in terms of this, but have had problems with people trying to represent what they believe in terms of and getting having uniform violations. I can't remember the name, but there's a player on the Pittsburgh Steelers whose mom died of breast cancer. And yes, the NFL has a whole month dedicated to breast cancer. The players can wear pink on certain types of articles of clothing like wristbands and socks. But after that, you're not allowed to wear, pink, anything. You're supposed to abide by the rules. And this one player, who I still can't remember the name, still continues to wear pink, and the NFL um, will still fine him because he's committing a uniform violation when all he's doing is trying to represent his mother who died of breast cancer. So I mean, in terms of that, how do you dictate what a uniform violation is? And yeah, it's well, oh, if we let him do it, then it's going to be more open to interpretation, and there'll be other things. And where do you draw the line? But something like these things is being reprimanded. It's too much, and as a sport, not only for your image, but you just have to realize what's going on in the world, and to do something like that, what could you possibly be thinking? So, I don't agree with what the women's NBA has done in that aspect and what the NFL has done in their aspect of their things. And we got to start making some changes.
Yeah, that's why I respect the hell out of what Carmelo Anthony's doing because he's trying to create social change, and he had a town hall meeting with a lot of politicians and people, police officers, and people of that ilk, and other athletes to try to fix the issues that are going on in our country. But I want to, but last before I forget, and this really disturbed me because this I actually heard about this today, and this is the reason why I think that certain athletes shouldn't be talking about social issues without getting all the facts. And this is a player that actually I respect the hell out of. He's real intelligent. He went to Stanford, and that is Richard Sherman. So I want your have you read up on Richard Sherman what he said?
I have not. I actually haven't heard it. What happened?
So pretty much what he said, and he's talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and he doesn't agree with everything that they're about because he thinks that the Black Lives Matter movement is a radical movement and that certain players shouldn't be involved with it because of the movement. But I'll look it up real quick and I can tell you exactly what the quote actually says because it's something that I think that most of our listeners should definitely, or and people that are watching should definitely check out because it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like, okay, so Richard Sherman was talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and what he said was anytime that you see people who are saying that black people, Black Lives Matter, and I'm gonna let you get back because my computer's kind of messing up right now. So yeah, anytime you see people who are saying Black Lives Matter and then saying it's time to kill police, then it's difficult to stand behind that logic. And then he continued to say that they are generalizing police just like they are asking police not to generalize us. And it is very hypocritical. So, in that respect, I find it difficult to fully support that movement. He also went on to say that I don't think that it's white players' obligation to speak up, and I also think it would be nice to show some unity within our league. So, what do you think about that? Like that's some crazy stuff that he said. Like, do you agree with either of those comments that he said?
Um, I mean, so he had said that he believes it's not just up to the white players, and there needs to be a unity. Um, you know, not to put the onus on the white players, but maybe in the terms of the unity sense, it should be everybody. It shouldn't matter what your color is. There should be everybody having a say on this because no, not one person is going to make a change. But if you, like you said with Carmelo and him meeting with the town hall or with the city hall, that that someone's got to start doing it, and the more people that start getting involved, the closer you can get to making a change. And then what was the first comment? Just the summarization of it.
Yeah, so he pretty much was talking about how that the reason why he doesn't support the Black Lives Matter movement is because it like I said it's a he thinks it's a radical movement and that it's promoting violence against cops.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said before, and I kind of eloquently said was that the problem with a lot of these athletes and probably with other people just in general is they don't know what Black Lives Matter really is about. Because like I said before, you got people that are saying all lives matter. Black Lives Matter is not meaning that we think that Black lives are above everyone else. We just want Black lives to be equal with everyone else because when people say all lives matter, they pretty much are not everybody, but there's a lot of those people are racist individuals or have racist tendencies to say those comments because of course we know that all lives matter. Of course we know that cop lives matter, the blue lives matter, but a lot of people still don't treat especially in the corporate world, don't treat women and black people the same that they treat black people. I mean, that they treat white people. I mean, that's just a known fact. Like women don't get paid as much as white people or Caucasians get paid, and women don't get paid as much as men, white Caucasian men. It's just how a country has been for a long time, and there just is not equality in either of those aspects.
I would agree with that, and I do think his comment, he's as well spoken as he is, and it is surprising coming from him. For him to say that Black Lives Matter movement is causing violence, um, like you said, you have to have all the facts first beforehand. Has there been violence recently? Yes. Has people been advocating the Black Lives Matter movement? Yes. But why do we have to say that they're both intertwined with each other? Has there been a lot of uh, incidents going on with police and happen to be Black lives, yes. But to say that that's the reason why, it's causing violence is a little narrow-minded, because there's a lot of things that cause violence. It might enhance maybe some of the anger towards a particular side, but to say that it's the sole, well, not even, maybe not the sole, but the reason why it's causing violence, that's saying a lot. Is it really causing violence, or is it more to the point that you said, everybody, Black lives just want to be seen on a level playing field, rather than we feel, that people see them on the other end, that they're not being on the level playing field, and that needs to be changed.
Yeah, and I just hope that people that watch this in the replay, I know there's going to be people that can be pissed off, especially the racists out there, but I just wanted to speak out on it because in the media this week, there was a lot of stuff that happened involving the Black Lives Matter movement. I really couldn't skip over it. And I don't care what other people think because I know that people that are watching this that are supportive of what I'm doing and what also Brandon's doing are going to watch the show no matter what, and they want to hear real people. They don't want to hear stuff that is kind of sugar coated and is not the truth. So I hope you guys love the show. Hope you guys. What's your Twitter so people can follow you, or Facebook so people can follow you or check you out?
Okay. At Twitter, I am at and then all capital letters BZEZ2. So you can follow me on Twitter through that, and on Instagram, I am same as BZEZ, and then it's dot two, like a period, and then two.
All right, and my Twitter is CamPerry21, and my Instagram is CPScott1. And I hope you guys tune in next week. I know Brandon's probably not going to be here next week, but I'm going to try to bring a couple guests if also Paulo's not going to be able to make it. I'm going to give you a great show. Hope you guys tune in next week again. And thanks for tuning in. And God bless, and see you next week.
Take care, everybody.